The young stuntman lay on the ground, his leg bent at an angle that made everyone watching feel sick. They'd been rehearsing a jump from a second-story balcony, a relatively simple stunt by Jackie Chan Stunt Team standards, but the landing had gone wrong. The stuntman had miscalculated, hit the ground with his weight distributed incorrectly, and his leg had buckled. He was trying not to scream, breathing hard through clenched teeth, waiting for someone to call an ambulance. Jackie walked over, knelt beside him and said quietly, "This is going to hurt for a long time. The bone will heal in months, but you'll feel it for years, especially when it's cold or when you're tired. I know because I've broken the same bone 3 times." He paused, made sure the young man was looking at him. "So now you have a choice. You can decide this job isn't worth it, that the risk is too high, and no one will think less of you. Or you can heal, come back, and be more careful next time. But if you come back all the way. No hesitation, no fear. Because hesitation is what gets you hurt worse." The young stuntman nodded and Jackie stood up, signaled for the medics, and walked back to reset the shot. By the time the ambulance arrived, Jackie had already redesigned the stunt to be safer, had walked through it himself to verify the new approach worked, and was ready to shoot again. This was 1985, and Jackie was building something that had never existed before in Hong Kong cinema. A permanent stunt team trained to his exact standards, loyal to him personally, willing to risk their lives because they believed in what they were creating together. To understand why Jackie needed his own stunt team, you need to understand how Hong Kong film production worked in the 1970s and early 80s. Stunt work was freelance and chaotic. When a production needed stuntmen for a fight scene or dangerous sequence, they'd hire whoever was available, usually through informal networks and word of mouth. You'd show up on set, get minimal briefing about what was required, execute the stunt, collect your payment, and move on to the next job. There was no continuity, no sustained training, no long-term relationships between stunt performers and the productions they worked on. This system worked adequately for conventional films with straightforward action sequences. But Jackie's vision for what action cinema could be required something completely different. He wanted to create fight scenes that were longer, more complex, more creative than anything being done in Hong Kong or anywhere else. He wanted to use the environment, props, furniture, architecture as part of the choreography. He wanted sequences that combined martial arts with acrobatics, comedy with danger, precision with improvisation, and most importantly, he wanted everything to be real, actually performed, captured on camera with minimal editing so audiences could see exactly what was happening. This kind of work couldn't be done with freelance stuntmen who showed up for a day or two, performed specific stunts, and left. It required people who understood Jackie's philosophy, who trained in his methods, who could anticipate what he wanted without lengthy explanation, who were willing to rehearse sequences dozens or hundreds of times until every movement was perfect. It required, in other words, a team, people who worked together regularly, developed shared vocabulary and techniques, built trust through repeated collaboration. Jackie started building this team in the early 1980s, drawing primarily from people he'd trained with at the China Drama Academy and other Peking opera schools. These were men, and they were almost exclusively men, which was its own limitation, who had the same foundational training Jackie had received: acrobatics, martial arts, the ability to take falls safely, years of physical discipline. They spoke the same movement language Jackie did, understood the principles of Peking opera performance that emphasized precision and timing, and came from the same background of poverty and hard training that created resilience and work ethic. The core members of what would become the Jackie Chan Stunt Team, known in Chinese as Cheng Ban, literally Jackie's family, included people like Mars, Yuan Biao, Sammo Hung, Yuan Hua, and others who'd been Jackie's brothers at the opera school. These weren't just employees or hired stuntmen. They were people Jackie had grown up with, suffered alongside during brutal training under Master Yu Jim Yuan. People who understood him personally and professionally in ways outsiders couldn't. But Jackie's vision required expanding beyond just his opera school brothers. He needed a larger team, more bodies to fill out fight scenes and execute the increasingly elaborate stunts his films required. So he started recruiting young men from similar backgrounds. Poor families, martial arts training, physical skills, and crucially, the willingness to take risks that more cautious or privileged people wouldn't accept. Jackie wasn't looking for the most talented martial artists or the most skilled acrobats, though those abilities mattered. He was looking for people with the right attitude, humble, hardworking, loyal, willing to put the work above their own safety or comfort. The training process Jackie developed was intense and continuous. It wasn't like Western stunt training, where you learn specific techniques in controlled environments with extensive safety equipment. Jackie's approach was closer to his own opera school experience. Repetition, physical conditioning, learning through doing rather than through theory. New team members would start with basic tasks, small roles in fight scenes, simple falls, background work, while observing how the experienced stunt team operated. They'd watch Jackie and the senior members choreograph sequences, see how movements were broken down and rehearsed, understand how camera angles and editing would enhance what the stuntmen actually performed. As they proved themselves capable and committed, they'd be given more complex and dangerous work. A stuntman might spend years doing relatively safe stunts before being trusted with something genuinely dangerous. This wasn't arbitrary. It was Jackie assessing whether someone had developed the judgment, skill, and emotional control necessary for high-risk work. Because the danger wasn't just physical. You had to be able to manage fear, to function under pressure, to execute precise movements when your body was screaming at you to protect yourself instead of completing the choreography. Training happened constantly, not just during official rehearsals, but whenever the team was together. They'd practice falls on hotel room beds while traveling. They'd work out fight choreography in parking lots between shooting locations. They'd discuss sequences over meals, sketching movements on napkins, debating better approaches. The team's entire life revolved around stunt work, and the boundary between work time and personal time essentially disappeared. This created intense bonds. These men spent more time with each other than with their families, shared hardships and injuries, developed the kind of trust that only comes from repeatedly putting your safety in someone else's hands. Jackie's role in the team was complex. He was the leader, the creative director, the person whose vision everyone was serving. But he was also a participant, doing the most dangerous stunts himself, taking the hardest hits, demonstrating every movement before asking others to perform it. This created respect that couldn't have existed if Jackie had been purely a director giving instructions from behind the camera. Everyone on the team knew that Jackie would never ask them to do something he wouldn't do himself, that he'd already done worse, that he was risking as much or more than anyone else. But Jackie was also demanding, perfectionist, sometimes harsh. If a stuntman made a mistake, Jackie would call it out directly, sometimes in front of the entire crew. If someone seemed scared or hesitant, Jackie would push them, questioning their commitment, challenging them to either commit fully or leave. This approach created resentment sometimes, but it also maintained standards. The team understood that excellence required intolerance of mediocrity, that being nice was less important than being excellent, that Jackie's harshness came from caring about the work rather than from personal cruelty. The financial arrangement Jackie established with his team was also distinctive. Rather than paying per stunt or per day like freelance arrangements, Jackie put his core team members on salary, providing steady income regardless of whether they were actively filming. This created financial security that most stunt performers never had, allowing team members to focus on training and preparation rather than constantly hustling for the next paying job. In exchange, team members were expected to be available whenever Jackie needed them, to prioritize his projects over other opportunities, to maintain loyalty even when other productions might offer more money for specific jobs. Jackie also covered medical expenses when team members got injured, which was frequent and inevitable given the work they did. Broken bones, concussions, torn ligaments, burns, cuts requiring stitches, these were routine occupational hazards. Hong Kong's film industry had minimal insurance or worker protection, so injured stuntmen typically bore the financial burden of their own medical treatment. Jackie's willingness to pay for his team's medical care was both practically necessary. Injured team members needed to heal so they could work again. And symbolically important, demonstrating that their well-being mattered to him beyond just their utility as workers. The team's reputation grew throughout the 1980s as Jackie's films became more successful and his stunts became more elaborate and dangerous. Police Story in 1985 was perhaps the breakthrough moment when international audiences and film industry professionals began recognizing the Jackie Chan Stunt Team as something unique. The film's climactic sequence in a shopping mall, with its extended fight choreography and dangerous falls, demonstrated coordination and precision that other stunt teams couldn't match. The famous pole slide, Jackie sliding down a pole wrapped in electrical lights, shattering bulbs, getting burned and cut, became iconic partly because of Jackie's performance, but also because of how his team set up the stunt, positioned the cameras, and captured it in a way that emphasized the reality and danger. Subsequent films like Armor of God, Project Apart 2, and Drunken Master 2 pushed the team's capabilities further. Sequences became longer, more complex, incorporating more elements and requiring more intricate coordination. A single fight scene might involve 20 stunt performers, dozens of props, carefully timed interactions between multiple fighters, and camera work that captured everything clearly without relying on rapid cuts or shaky cam to hide imperfections. The level of choreographic complexity was comparable to elaborate dance sequences, except that unlike dance, mistakes in stunt work meant serious injury. The team developed a distinctive style that reflected Jackie's philosophy, but also the collective experience of its members. Fights were designed to flow continuously, with attackers coming in waves, defenders adapting to whatever was available in the environment, and a rhythm that built tension and released it through moments of humor or unexpected creativity. The team became expert at using props, ladders, chairs, bicycles, umbrellas, anything within reach could become part of the choreography. This required not just physical skill, but imagination, the ability to see ordinary objects as potential tools or weapons, to improvise solutions when the planned choreography wasn't working. Safety protocols, such as they were, developed through experience and tragedy. The team learned which kinds of falls were relatively safe if executed correctly and which carried unacceptable risk. They developed techniques for rigging safety equipment that wouldn't be visible on camera. Wires positioned carefully, pads hidden in clothing, ways of positioning bodies to absorb impact. But the protocols were always secondary to the reality that this work was inherently dangerous, and that eliminating risk entirely would eliminate the authenticity that made Jackie's films distinctive. Injuries were common and accepted as inevitable. Team members developed a dark humor about pain and damage, joking about broken bones the way office workers might joke about boring meetings. But serious injuries, the kind that ended careers or caused permanent disability, were treated with somber gravity. When a team member got hurt badly, Jackie would visit them in the hospital, pay the medical bills, and ensure they continued receiving their salary during recovery. If the injury was career-ending, Jackie would find other work for them in his productions, coordinator roles, assistant positions, anything that kept them employed and connected to the team. There was a family quality to the team that went beyond just the Chinese name, Jackie's Family. Team members lived together during productions, ate together, trained together, shared rooms and resources. Older, more experienced members mentored younger ones, teaching techniques and passing down knowledge that wasn't written anywhere. Personal relationships developed, marriages, children, complex social dynamics that come from people spending years in close proximity under stressful conditions. The team became a closed world with its own culture, its own standards, its own way of doing things that outsiders had difficulty understanding or penetrating. This insularity created both strengths and limitations. The strength was cohesion and loyalty. Team members would do almost anything for Jackie and for each other, creating reliability and commitment that was rare in Hong Kong's chaotic film industry. The limitation was that the team could be resistant to outside input or new approaches. They developed techniques that worked for them, and suggesting different methods could be interpreted as criticism or disrespect. This occasionally created friction when Jackie worked with non-team members or when external stunt coordinators were brought in for specific expertise. The team's work on Rush Hour in 1998 represented a significant moment of cultural collision. This was Jackie's big Hollywood breakthrough, a major American production with American crew, American safety standards, and American insurance companies watching every decision. The American stunt coordinators were accustomed to extensive safety meetings, detailed risk assessments, and protocols that minimized danger. Jackie's team was accustomed to Jackie designing a stunt, demonstrating it, and everyone executing it with minimal discussion. The two approaches clashed constantly. American insurance regulations required safety equipment that Jackie and his team viewed as unnecessary impediments: crash pads, safety wires, stunt doubles for certain shots. Jackie's team wanted to work the way they always had, doing real stunts with minimal safety equipment, trusting in their training and Jackie's judgment. The compromises that eventually emerged satisfied neither side completely, but allowed the production to proceed. Jackie's team learned to work within American systems to some degree, and the American crew learned to trust that Jackie's team knew what they were doing, even if their methods seemed reckless by American standards. As Jackie aged and his body accumulated injuries, his role in the team gradually shifted. By the 2000s, Jackie was in his 50s, still doing stunts, but no longer able to take the hardest falls or perform the most dangerous sequences. This created opportunities for other team members to step forward, to take on the physically demanding work Jackie could no longer safely do. But it also created tension. The team had been built around Jackie's presence and participation, and his gradual withdrawal changed the dynamic. Some team members transitioned into choreography and coordination roles, using their decades of experience to design stunts for Jackie's films and increasingly for other productions. The Jackie Chan Stunt Team's reputation meant other directors wanted to hire them, wanted access to their expertise and precision. This created economic opportunities for team members, but also raised questions about loyalty and priorities. Was the team primarily Jackie's personal resource, or were they independent professionals who happened to have trained with Jackie? These questions never had clear answers and were negotiated individually based on specific situations and relationships. The team's influence on action cinema extended far beyond Jackie's own films. Other Hong Kong directors and stunt coordinators studied the team's techniques, incorporating elements into their own work. Hollywood choreographers and stunt coordinators, particularly after seeing Jackie's work in American films, began adopting principles the team had pioneered. Longer takes, clearer geography, using the environment creatively, designing fights that told stories rather than just providing spectacle. Films like The Matrix, the John Wick series, and various Marvel productions show clear influence from Jackie's approach to action, filtered through the Jackie Chan Stunt Team's innovations. By 2020, as Jackie approached his 70s, the team had evolved into something different from what it had been in the 1980s. Many of the original core members had retired or moved into less physically demanding roles. Younger stunt performers had joined, bringing different training backgrounds and cultural perspectives. Jackie himself was making fewer action-heavy films, focusing more on dramatic roles that didn't require extensive stunt work. The team still existed, still worked on Jackie's projects, but its character had changed. Less a family bound by shared suffering, and more a professional organization with its own identity separate from Jackie. The question of the team's legacy is complicated. On one hand, they demonstrated that stunt work could be elevated to an art form, that action sequences could be as carefully crafted and meaningful as any other aspect of filmmaking. They proved that authenticity and real physical risk could create emotional responses that digital effects and safe stunts couldn't replicate. They influenced generations of filmmakers and stunt performers worldwide, changing how action is conceived and executed in commercial cinema. On the other hand, the team's approach required accepting levels of risk and injury that are increasingly viewed as unacceptable in modern film production. The culture of pushing through pain, of proving toughness through willingness to get hurt, of minimizing safety concerns in service of the shot, these attitudes produced amazing work, but also damaged bodies and sometimes destroyed lives. Multiple team members carry permanent injuries from their years doing stunts. Some retired early due to accumulated damage. The question of whether the artistic achievement justified the physical cost is one each team member has to answer for themselves. Jackie has talked about the team with obvious pride and affection in interviews. He credits them with making his vision possible, acknowledges that he couldn't have created the films he made without their skill and sacrifice, and maintains that the bonds formed through shared experience are deeper than ordinary professional relationships. But he's also been honest about the cost, the injuries, the pain, the team members who paid permanent prices for temporary glory. In his autobiography, Jackie includes a section about team members who died or were permanently disabled during stunt work, acknowledging that the pursuit of excellence sometimes demanded more than anyone should have to give. There's a scene in the documentary Traces of a Dragon, Jackie Chan and His Lost Family, where Jackie visits a former team member who's been paralyzed from a stunt gone wrong. They talk quietly about old times, about sequences they created together, about the price this man paid. Jackie is clearly emotional, torn between pride in what they achieved and guilt about the consequence. The former team member doesn't blame Jackie. He talks about the work with satisfaction, saying he knew the risks, made his choices, and doesn't regret them despite the outcome. But watching that conversation, it's impossible not to question whether any film is worth someone losing the use of their legs. The Jackie Chan Stunt Team represents something that probably can't and perhaps shouldn't be replicated in contemporary cinema. Film production has become more safety conscious, more regulated, more aware of duty of care obligations to performers. Insurance companies, labor laws, and changing cultural attitudes about acceptable workplace risk all create barriers to the kind of dangerous, minimally protected stunt work Jackie's team routinely performed. This is probably good. Fewer people will be permanently injured or killed making movies. But it also means something is lost. The particular intensity and authenticity that came from people genuinely risking themselves for artistic vision. What the team proved at its best was that collective commitment to excellence could produce work that transcended individual capabilities. Jackie was the creative force and the public face, but the stunts people remember from his films were collaborative creations. Dozens of people working in precise coordination, each person executing their part flawlessly, trusting that everyone else would do the same. When it worked, when a complex sequence came together exactly as designed and was captured perfectly on camera, it was as close to magic as film production gets. Human beings pushing past normal limitations through skill, preparation, and trust. The team also demonstrated that loyalty and family, whether biological or chosen, could survive in a commercial industry that typically treats people as disposable resources. Hong Kong's film industry was notoriously exploitative, using people up and discarding them when they were no longer useful. Jackie's team wasn't perfect. There were power imbalances and problems inherent in any organization built around a single dominant figure, but it provided stability, community, and mutual support that most stunt performers never found. Team members knew Jackie would take care of them if they got hurt, would provide work when they needed it, would remember their contributions even after they could no longer perform. That loyalty, even more than the technical skills or the famous stunts, might be the team's most important legacy. Now, as Jackie's active filmmaking career winds down and the original team members age out of stunt work, the question is whether what they built will continue in some form or whether it was inherently tied to a specific moment, a specific group of people, and a specific philosophy that can't be transferred to a new generation. Some former team members have established their own stunt companies, training new performers in techniques they learned working with Jackie. Others have moved into choreography and coordination, applying their experience to contemporary productions with modern safety standards. The techniques and innovations will persist, incorporated into how action is done across global cinema. But the specific culture, the willingness to risk everything, the acceptance of pain as routine, the subordination of individual safety to collective achievement, that culture is probably dying with the generation that created it. And maybe that's appropriate. Maybe every era develops its own approach to action cinema that reflects contemporary values and technological capabilities. Jackie and his team created something perfect for their time and place, something that couldn't have existed earlier or later, something that required the specific combination of Hong Kong's film industry, Chinese opera training, and Jackie's particular vision and personality. The Jackie Chan Stunt Team was never just about the stunts. It was about what a group of people could achieve when they committed fully to shared purpose, when they trusted each other absolutely, when they were willing to sacrifice personal safety for collective excellence. Those principles apply beyond just stunt work, beyond just filmmaking. They're about what humans are capable of when they stop protecting themselves and start pushing limits. The team proved that ordinary people from poor backgrounds with no special advantages could create extraordinary work through discipline, training, loyalty, and the refusal to accept that something couldn't be done just because it was dangerous or difficult. That's the legacy, not just the specific stunts or the films, but the proof that excellence is possible when people care enough to pay whatever price it demands. Jackie built his team on that principle, trained them to embody it, and together they created work that will be remembered long after the pain and injuries are forgotten. Whether that was worth the cost is a question each person has to answer for themselves. But what can't be questioned is that it was real, that they did it, that for a few decades in Hong Kong, there existed a group of people willing to risk everything in service of making audiences somewhere in the world gasp and laugh and feel something genuine. And in an industry built on illusions, that authenticity was the rarest and most valuable thing they could have created.